Hi, welcome to today's session on today will be just a brief session on some questions that's being raised by the community regarding the ReitCircles platform. So we'll go through a few of these questions. So we have categorized the questions today's session among regulations and legal structures. So what does it mean for a house owner on the ReitCircles platform, right? So here are some of the questions. Is it possible for governments to change, censor, or block ownership of house assets? And I felt there's another question which is the same type. How confident are you that the legal framework will be mature enough to allow operations, example, a token representing a real estate asset to be recognized by the relevant government authorities? Now let's go through the process. What happens on real estate on the ReitCircles platform? You have an asset on ReitCircles, you have the onboarding app, and finally, after you do onboarding, an FT is minted with all the information of the real estate asset, and it is verified on the on our platform. So all the data that comes onto the blockchain is actually verified on chain. And at any point of time, you can look up who has verified, whether they're legally qualified, what are their qualifications, and so on. So this is as good as it gets of a data representation of real world assets onto the blockchain, right? So whenever you try to create an asset, and next step is that you try to create a financial construct of this real world asset on the chain. Moment you try to create a financial construct like lending, fractional ownership, etc., you have to do a real world representation of the same, because this lock-in factor has to be there. Just like we transferred the asset onto the chain, moment you want to do financial construct, you have to lock in the real world asset using some legal construct. Yes. And this is the most crucial part, that you have to have a real world construct and lock it in. And this real world construct can, for example, and this, but not the only one, can be a trust. For example, you transfer the ownership of the asset to a trust, and the trust generally has trustees. It has some assets under its let's say jurisdiction, and it has beneficiaries, means who is actually going to be the beneficiary of the asset held by the trust. So for example, the beneficiary could be a DAO, and this DAO is basically a smart contract on the blockchain, and the DAO can basically now be participated by different people who wants to be part of this DAO. So if they want to lend money to the person and take partial ownership of the asset, or lend money at a partial interest, and if there is a default, then they have a claim on the asset. And all these partial fractional lending and fractionalization or fractional ownerships can be done in this way. Yes. And also the government authorities, coming to the question of governments to change, censor, or block ownership of the house assets, because everything is transparent, the government actually has no incentive to do anything wrong, because we will also have a way to collect taxes, and or ability of the government agents to log in and check and charge taxes on this asset. And because we have a wallet based system, this automatically can be done under the instructions, let's say, from the government, and this taxes can be paid directly to government wallets, right? Second question, how will ReitCircles ensure the rights of the house asset to be maintained over time, right? So in this case, we will have on our platform the NFTs that will be evolvable. Remember from our earlier videos, we had said that we work on the principle of evolve the data, but not erase it, right? So do not erase, but evolve the data. So in this case, continuously data can be changed on chain, and it can be done directly by the owner, right? And or somebody who is looking after the asset, like a real estate agent. They can change the data, of course, with the permission of the owners, right? So the owners, whenever there is a change set of on the data, the NFTs that represent the thing has to be part of that transaction. so that the owner always needs to be part of the transaction, has to be part of the co-signee. So every time someone there's a change set, it can be signed by different keys, for example, right? And it has to be the key of the owner, and it can be the key also of the real estate agent who is changing the data. Yes. So there are multiple keys that will be associated with the changes, and one of these keys certainly has to be the owner key, for example, right? So this is the owner key. So in this way, you can actually ensure that the data changes are properly done. They can be reviewed, of course, by the owner, and they are always maintainable over time. So owner can update data on the blockchain. It reduces fraud by the third parties. Platform will work with owners in order to ensure that this is kept up to date. Right. Okay, next question. The entity that buys the real estate in real life, what is the structure of that entity? What are the risks? Are the investors going to buy shares in the trust or shares in the real estate itself? So, as we said, if you have a DAO construct, normally you don't, whenever you DAO issues some tokens, DAO tokens, and they are kind of exchanged in return for investments done by the owners. So investors can invest money into the asset, and in return, what they get is these tokens. So whenever the exchange happens reverse, so if they have to sell something, they will sell the tokens and get the money, right? And if they can sell it either to co-owners, right, or to other corporates, whoever wants to buy them or invest in the real estate. Yes. And yes, you don't. So the DAO, part of the DAO, let's say, will be the tokens. So that's where the digital counterpart of it. And you don't get like, so it's, you don't get papers in your hand, right? But you get these tokens, and these tokens are legal representation of the DAO. If required legally, that and it is the same whenever you sell bug, let's say via a bank, right? And the bank lends you or borrows money against your asset, right? You sign a legal construct. So in this case, again, this trust relationship will be there. So there will be legal papers for that, and the trust will basically, one of the beneficiaries of the trust will be DAO LLC. So DAO LLC will then be entrusted that it can have further beneficiaries. So they are not direct beneficiaries of the trust, but they are beneficiaries of the DAO or an LLC, for example, right? What are the risks? Well, the risk is equivalent to the risk that you have in any, whenever you buy or invest into a company or into any other investment vehicles. The risks remain the same. There is no additional risk in this one. In fact, it is much better because the tokens are far better way of transacting than papers. Everything is transparent, it's on the chain, and you can never fake these things so easily because everything is transparent on a public blockchain. Last question: how does the buyer of the house asset get information about the state of the house over time? Well, as we said, we'll provide you a dashboard with all the tools to maintain their asset information, including regular audits, etc. So this ends the short session on a Q&A on one of the segments for regulation and legal structures. Thank you.